Now we discuss one institutional context, and this time we will focus on the context of court. There is a court trial, and how through frame we enforce certain norms and ideology. This is called ideological work. Alec, a Canadian linguist, conducted a study with scripts of court trials. There was court trial. The conversation between the jury and the defendants and the complainants, that was turned into scripts. Scripts were analyzed by the researcher. The complainants, जो शिकायत करता है मुद्दई, and defendants, जिसके खिलाफ शिकायत होती है, मुद्दा इलय, ये कोर्ट की ज़बान है. Both were students involved in some immoral act. Okay. And she, the researcher, analyzed the scripts of dialogues which were spoken during this trial of the students. This is Susan Alec, the professor, from whose research we are discussing this ideological work going on in the trial. After analyzing scripts, she concluded that trial was held, dialogues were turned into scripts, scripts were analyzed, and after analysis, the researcher concludes that there is an utmost resistance requirement to prove the defendants guilty. वो जिसको कहते हैं कि जो शिकायत लेके आया है वही सबूत दे. So the same thing happens here. She concludes that there was a condition by the court that if the girls who are complainants against the boys who are defendants, if they prove logically that they try to avoid the attacks, utmost resistance through their complete possible efforts of resistance, so then the boys would be guilty. Otherwise, the girls are on the other side, they are at fault. Okay. She says that this requirement of utmost resistance, girls have to prove that they have availed all options of resistance. So she says that this requirement is a frame that creates presuppositions. If you remember our previous talk in earlier modules, I have explained that frames create assumptions, presuppositions, and presuppositions take form of questions. And this is how the ideology works in institutional context. So this requirement is the frame that controls the talk, the discourse that is going on in the trial. The presuppositions, this frame creates certain assumptions about the girls, about their actions, and about the actions of the boys, right, in the mind of the jury, of the judges. The presuppositions are realized in the questions of the court. Okay, so they want to know whether these assumptions are true or false, so they ask questions. The complainants were to prove how effectively they had used available options to save themselves, to protect themselves from the attack of the boys. If they could not do so, they would not be declared victim. Okay. The frame of resistance, we have said that this is the frame. It regulates the whole trial. The frame of resistance made the complainant's arguments weak because they could not openly talk about the way they resisted. They can't talk about it publicly before the court. So what happens? The court thinks that their arguments are weak. So the result is that though the defendants were proved guilty by testimonies, गवाहियों से वो मुजरिम साबित हो गए हैं, testimonies of the witnesses, गवाहों की जो शहादतें हैं, testimonies, they have been proved guilty, but they escaped punishment because the girls couldn't prove their case. The researcher concluded that all this shows that courts followed dominant stereotypes about women, because the frame of resistance it created, it rather you can say it created, it awakened stereotypes about girls in mind of the jury, and they were thinking through the lens of those stereotypes. उसी लेंस से वो लड़कियों को देख रहे थे. So it shows that the courts followed dominant stereotypes about women. The institutional presuppositions, the frames, limited the options of women to freely build their actual gender identity. They couldn't prove their case here. So before we conclude this module, I give you a task to understand these points practically. Why do you think women in Pakistan are reluctant, hesitant, वो हिचकिचाती हैं, to get legal help in case of any violence at home or at office or workplace? Do you think gender stereotypes or frames are the main reason behind this reluctance? Support your answer with incidents reported in the newspapers, or there are crime report programs which are telecast on TV channels these days. So from either of these resources, you should select some incident like this and try to answer these questions. So we conclude, we perform gender through language in institutional context. Number one, social institutions follow dominant gender ideology. As I said, whatever happens at micro level is related with institutional context with societal context, the dominant ideology and norms. The gender ideology, the dominant ideology, the societal ideology controls institutions, and through institutions controls our private talk.